well, you can't just say, well, that's it, I've had it. And so you kind of work until the projects get completed, and then it's okay. There we go.
While she may be humble, Shirley knows that all the time she has put in truly is making a big impact.
We've made a big difference, but it's over such a period of time that you don't realize until you sit here in this chair and get asked about it, and you don't realize, but we've done a lot. A lot.
We all feel the pain at the pump.
Aw, man!
Idling more than 10 seconds harms your engine and wastes gas. Cut the waste. Cut the pollution. Let's be idle-free, 253. Learn more at tpchd.org/idlefree253.
Washington is an incredibly biodiverse place, and at Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, we want to make sure it stays that way, now and for generations to come. Learn more at wdfw.wa.gov/biodiversity.
Your life sounds pretty great. Don't let a buzz ruin it. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
Good morning. I would like to call to order the Performance Audit Committee for March 26, 2025. The time is 10:31. If the clerk could please call the roll.
Thank you. Councilmember Ayala.
Here.
Councilmember Kruger.
Here. Here. Sorry.
Julie DeMuth.
Here.
Tanisha Lyons.
Ms. Lyons, are you present? You look unmuted.
Can you not hear me?
Now we can. There we go.
Oh, I don't know why you couldn't hear me. Okay.
Okay.
Michael Transu.
Excused. Oh, I spoke too soon. Mr. Transu just joined us.
And Councilmember Hitchin.
Here.
All members are present.
Okay, thank you. With all members present, we definitely have a quorum. Thank you, everybody. We have several items on our agenda this morning. I am moving through time too quickly. Is there any changes to our agenda as shared and posted? Seeing none, we will consider our agenda approved. That brings us to item number 4, which is the proposed contract with a juvenile court study. We're going to go to Mr. Vetter to brief.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Just by a little bit of background, the County Council passed the biennial budget for 2024 and 2025, including a provision that the Performance Audit Committee's work plan is requested to include an analysis of Pierce County Juvenile Court structure, practices, and programming for the purposes of identifying opportunities to reduce youth violence, work with youth while in custody at Raymond Hall, youth and diversion, and to promote overall public safety. At its February meeting, the committee discussed a draft contract with the University of Washington CoLab for community and behavioral health policy to conduct a review of the alternative programs offered by the court, as detailed in the revised scope of work in your meeting packet. CoLab specializes in research on youth in the criminal justice system, including specifically behavioral health needs. They've previously worked with Pierce County Juvenile Court on an evaluation of their probation programs. The revised draft contract in your packet incorporates feedback from the committee and the court, and I'll just point out a couple of areas where it's been revised. And perhaps you could pull up the draft contract. It's page 4 of the packet. Okay, thank you. In task 1, identification of the obligations and functions of the court and court partners. We've added 2 items to reflect court comments. One is a task on documenting the relationships between the court and its internal criminal justice partners, including the prosecuting attorney and assigned counsel, and a task on how the court collaborates with other partners, social services, law enforcement, and schools. Along with identifying the court's legal obligations, this will hopefully set the stage for understanding the court's programs and efforts to address youth violence. In task 2, analysis of factors contributing to youth violence. In response to committee comments, we've added an item to review relevant research and data to understand the impact of environmental factors on youth violence, and made revisions to other items to reflect that we want to understand the county's and community's role in addressing youth violence as they interact with the court. This is all for the purpose of reaching the main goals of the study, which is to understand the legal requirements and constraints of the court in its approach to reducing youth violence, to understand the needs of youth coming into the system, particularly regarding behavioral health, and identify how those needs can be addressed through court partnerships with the community and other county services, and then to explore how programs and services can best be delivered, especially with respect to potential renovations to Raymond Hall. We've spoken with the court who agreed that these revisions were good, and they're happy to work with us as we go forward.
Thank you for the updates and modifications and getting us to a better place. I will look to my colleagues on the Performance Audit Committee to see if you have any additions or questions. Mr. Transu.
Well, great. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Vetter, just a couple of maybe more technical things, and I'm a little bit as a loss, as you know, as I couldn't attend the last meeting. In the system frameworks in 1.1, where you talk about identify legal constraints. Is legal constraints kind of examining current law? And so, I mean, one of the things I saw in there is identify legal requirements and constraints, because I don't know everything is going to be a constraint. It may be just a requirement of their statute that, you know, they're required to do under current law, and it may or may not be a constraint, but it certainly may be a requirement. And then also in that same section down at the last where it says compare Pierce County, I think you intend to not Pierce County, but Pierce County Juvenile Court. I may go without saying, but just a note there. And then in 1.2 where it talks about assign counsel with juvenile down at the bottom, in document relationships, the juvenile court, and I think, and other stakeholders in addressing youth violence. So we're not just looking at the court system and who's internally to Pierce County, but we're also doing an examination of the programs that are out there that are helping with or feeding into the juvenile court. And then the last thing for me is I noted that the CoLab folks, and this is just something I think we need to keep in mind, that they have previously worked with the district, with the juvenile court. And I just want to kind of flag when we do that, I always want to be mindful of any predispositions that the contractor may come with because they've worked with, in this case, the court before. So just wanted to flag that for folks and for me so that as we look at things coming in, we understand that they've worked with the court before. And that's good for background and expertise, but may also just give rise to a predisposition or two that we just need to be mindful of. So just some technical changes for your thoughts, and then just an overall comment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Committee Member Chansu. Other feedback or comments? So I really appreciate where we've landed on this. Mr. Vetter, what's, as far as the comments that were brought up by Committee Member Chansu, how best do we do that? Because I'm assuming that you would like us to take action and approve the scope of work today so that we can actually start trying to find somebody to do the work.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I can try to respond right now, and maybe that will help. So yes, 1.1, the constraints and requirements, we are simply laying those out. And the purpose of that is to, in a simple sense, is to demonstrate that there are elements of causes of youth violence that occur before the courts have any role to play. And we just want to draw that distinction so that the court isn't being held to a standard of reducing youth violence and things that they can't control.
Okay.
That's the purpose of that. Definitional, basically. Thank you for pointing out the where it should be specified that it's Pierce County, that it's juvenile court. And I do think that we have a lot in there that tries to look at collaboration with other systems. I think you were referring to the attorneys, prosecuting attorney and Department of Assigned Counsel and how they work with them. It is definitely our intention to look at how they work with community partners and things like that. And then finally, the last point. Oh, yes, right. And thank you for pointing that out. Yes, CoLab has done work in the past. I think the work that they've done was pretty specific on a specific program. And I don't think that, I guess that the program could come into play and looking at the broader picture, but we felt like this project was sufficiently broad that they wouldn't be kind of rating their own work, so to speak.
Great.
So, thank you for pointing that out.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Vetter. Appreciate that, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there additional comments or questions? Committee Member Ayala.
Thank you, Chair. Just one comment on this. I appreciate the community partnership element of this. I know that there's a lot existing both in and out of government. I'm a little cognizant of the landscape of our community partners right now, especially as it relates to funding. So I'm curious around what possibilities may exist in this scope of work that may relate to what historically has happened, but also acknowledge the realities of some of these community partners in present day. We don't know what our landscape's going to look like in the future, and so I think that the report back, I'm cognizant of the report back that we receive after this is completed, how some of that data may be slightly skewed.
Yes, thank you for the question, Committee Member Ayala. Looking historically, I think this is actually looking, the study itself is looking more to the future. So while we'll look at some of the partnerships, I think when we look at the gaps, which is really, this is what is identified, then that'll tell us more about what we should be doing, and whether there's money for that, that's a different question, obviously. But at least we can identify the places where there are holes, more so than past performance. I think that's what we're aiming at. Okay.
Thank you for the comments. Okay, well, seeing no other feedback at this time, I am appreciative of the work to get us to this point, and to the courts, the juvenile courts team reaching out to make sure we were landing on a place and a space that will really, that we all agree on, so that we will be partners in this work. And thinking of the original intent that I had when bringing this up really was around what are we doing well, and as we think about the future of a physical space in the county, which is currently Raymond Hall, and what we're actually doing to promote and support the juvenile justice system. And I don't just mean confinement of youth, I mean the system broadly. This allows us to figure out what is our system, clearly lay it out, and then that allows us in the future to think about funding those systems, looking at systems that maybe are no longer necessary or need to be better supported, and the actual physical space for Raymond Hall, because that's going to be a very expensive investment in the county, and we want to be thoughtful about that, and this will kind of set the landscape for that. So thank you for all of that. We do need, I guess, a motion then would be appropriate at this time, Mr. Vetter. So is there a member of the committee that would be willing to propose a motion on adopting the scope of work?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the scope of work for the juvenile court study. Ms. Medley, is that what you need? Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. We will get started on the next steps for that. That brings us to item number 5, which is our work plan for 2024-2025. Mr. Vetter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. By county code, the Performance Audit Committee is required to approve an annual performance audit work program. The proposed 2024-2025 work program is included in the meeting packet. The draft has been updated to reflect the committee discussion and the January 22nd meeting and any feedback I've received from committee members. And this would also be an opportunity for committee members to provide feedback now as well. We're calling it even though it's an annual work program, the code was written before we went to a biennial budget, so we've just been calling it a 2024-2025 work program to conform with our budgeting. And I have something I can speak to based on feedback, but I'd like to give the chair of the committee.
Committee Member Kruger, if you can mute your microphone. There you go. Thank you. I'm glad you were able to participate, though.
So I have added one item based on feedback to the draft work program, which I can speak to, or if you would like to have the committee speak first, Chair.
Let's have you do an overview and highlight the things that have changed or been added, and then we'll see what other thoughts come up. It's just for those on Zoom, it could be easier because screens are small.
Thank you. So for the most part, it's the same. What you're looking at is very similar to what you saw in January with the behavioral health tax program evaluation, juvenile court, which you've just discussed, parks funding transparency, with which Mr. Eisenman is going to speak to after this, behavioral health inpatient capacity, is on there as well. This new one that you'll see is Rainier Communications franchise fee and PEG payments study. And I don't know if you want me to go into more detail on that right now.
Is it on the, let's go ahead and go into a little detail
Okay.
on this one since
So
it's the new one.
for the benefit of the committee, in 1992, Pierce County and several cities and towns created and became members of the Rainier Communications Commission, which is also known as RCC, the purpose of which is to provide video services, share broadband and telecom policy information, jointly negotiate cable television franchise agreements with cable television companies, and resolve customer complaints. The membership includes Pierce County, Puyallup, University Place, Sumner, Fife, Ording, DuPont, and Ruston. The commission is more commonly known as PCTV, which is providing our video today. It's a PEG channel, which offers council meeting, which is public education and government, and offers council meeting coverage and government video content for public information and outreach. A special fund is established with Pierce County. Pierce County is the administering member of RCC for all revenues, reimbursements, and expenditures, along with a restricted capital budget for video equipment purchasing. And RCC is funded by a percentage of each member's gross cable franchise fee revenues. RCC members have franchise agreements with Comcast authorizing them to construct, operate, and maintain a cable system over rights of ways, highways, and county or city property. And this proposed study would review payments made under terms of their franchise agreements with Comcast to Pierce County and other RCC members who choose to participate for the use of the local government's public right-of-way. Other recent reviews in other jurisdictions have identified underpayments of amounts due by comparing the gross revenues that Comcast receives with different categories of revenue that they can have that the consultant can identify. So it would identify revenue types that Comcast may not have included in the determination of franchise fee payments, including reconciling subscriber revenues, reviewing non-sufficient funds fees, late fees, advertising fees, any other type of revenue that may not have been reflected in the gross payments. So that's just a basic background of the study. I know that Megan Hutton from RCC is here. If you have any more specific questions about the functions of RCC and the transactions with Comcast, I'll note that if the committee agrees to include it on the work program, staff will return to the committee with a draft request for proposals with more details for the committee's review.
Thank you for the overview. Megan, do you have anything you want to add up front or just respond to questions if they come up?
No, I thought Bill did a nice job of covering it. I don't have anything to add at this time unless there's questions. Happy to answer.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for joining us. So this came up because I serve on RCC and they were talking about this audit they wanted to do. And Pierce County is one of the largest recipients of these fees. And so it made a lot of sense when I heard audit and I heard countywide. It was like, why wouldn't we have our own audit committee try and engage with this work? We're kind of set up to do this to help support this work for the county. And we are noticing across the country that more and more people are cutting the cord. And so we haven't, to my knowledge, done an audit like this, even though we've had franchise agreements. We haven't actually taken this deep dive look. Tacoma just finished one of these in the last year or two and found some, did their own. And so I think it would behoove us to do this, to level set, to make sure we are really aware of what is happening in our county and the impacts it affects our budget. There's other things beyond PCTV that are paid for through these franchise agreements, and we haven't really assessed if everything is coming our way that's supposed to. So this is a good way to create a space to do that. Are there questions from committee members? And I hope I didn't make it more confusing. It was definitely not my intent. Okay, I'm not seeing any. So we don't have a scope of work. Do you need an actual motion to approve us to add? We'll adopt the scope of work today. So once we do that, then this would be added to it.
Well, what we'll do is this will just, if there's a motion to approve the work program with that included,
Okay.
then in terms of budgeting, there's budget, and since this would be primarily done by outside consultants, it wouldn't require too much staff time.
Okay.
So we could fit that in.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions on that? Otherwise, we'll just keep moving down the work plan. And Megan, thank you for being here for the little bit of time. Okay, let's go ahead and move on.
We have listed as well a COVID response study, jail healthcare costs, housing cost drivers, and AI and government services. And these are all sort of later studies. Probably wouldn't be begun this year, or maybe just initiated. And then for follow-ups, we were looking at animal sheltering costs, senior center funding, and broadband access, and a follow-up to our use of force report.
Okay. And I'm not sure if committee member, vice chair actually, Kruger is in a space to speak up, but she raised a question around the housing cost drivers and making sure that there's some work at the state level. And so when this scope of work, because this will be a little bit later, that we make sure that things that happened at the state level are incorporated into that work. As it's not just county cost drivers, that it's state, federal, anything that increase the costs of housing. And I saw her unmute.
Yeah, you got it. Thank you.
Okay. So are there any questions on the work plan? And is there anything that we would like to see added? Committee Member Demuth.
Thank you, Chair Hitchin. In terms of, I have an idea on something that I'd like to consider adding to the work plan. It has to do with analyzing our therapeutic court programs here within the county. The research and data analysis team within finance has actually done some work on this. We had a plan to do a 2-phase analysis project, with the first phase looking at both district and superior court therapeutic court programs. It looked at acceptance rates, participation rates, termination rates, and graduation rates, as well as some demographic analysis, being primarily focused on race, those entering, having the opportunity to do the programs, and what the success rate was. We've actually completed that analysis. It's in a draft state. It's been reviewed by district court as well as the Washington State Center for Court Research, who we worked with. We haven't gotten concurrence from all the parties to finalize the report, and are unable to move forward at this point in time. There's a strong interest on behalf of the executive, as well as I know council members are very interested in this information, given our behavioral health sales tax will be sunsetting in the next couple of years. So just wanted to bring that up as a potential item to add to the work plan.
Thank you for that. I know we do have the behavioral health tax program evaluation happening in the spring of 2025, and I know we are not doing every investment. Do we know what investments we were thinking about looking at with that, or had we not decided that? Mr. Eisenman.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Joe Eisenman, Council Committee staff. We had not completely finalized the list. I think there was a hope to include at least some component of the therapeutic courts in the initial look, just as one of the things that we are funding. So I think it might be worth looking at that and see if that would tie into that project.
Okay. Because I agree there's definitely interest there. And I know that when we look at our justice program, we've continued to really focus on demographics and disparities. Mm-hmm. It's one of the reasons we keep coming back and looking at some of these other programs within and use of force and some of those things around demographics. So I think looking at our behavioral health investments and therapeutic court investments would be good. Do you, Committee Member DeMuth, would it work to embed it within that? Because that's already in, I believe, in the tax, it was required that we do this. So it wouldn't be a surprise that we were looking at things, or did you want it as a standalone?
I think the only item to consider is that the analysis was a comprehensive look at all of our therapeutic court programs as opposed to just the portion funded by the behavioral health sales tax. So our initial look was broader across both district court and superior court, encompassing all of the different diversion programs we have.
Okay. Let's see if Committee Member Transu has something to add to that, and then maybe we can think about whether we want to do it as a standalone. Committee Member Transu?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would, listening to Committee Member DeMuth, it sounds like this is a really, a comprehensive piece of work, and because of that, and what she said in terms of it's a more comprehensive look, whereas the behavioral health sales tax funds a piece of that. I mean, I might put this in the category of, so in my Olympia work, there is this group called the Washington State Institute of Public Policy, or WISIP. And WISIP often, they don't do original research, but they do kind of peer review research. And so, in terms of analyzing a particular report, or in some instances, a lot of reports together. So it seems to me that this is big enough to warrant its own kind of look-see, and be appropriate, because it's so broad for this committee to look at it as a standalone rather than as, it certainly can be looked at as part of the behavioral health tax review that's required, but it seems like this is big enough to warrant its own sort of place, if you will, in our work plan.
Okay.
Thank you.
Appreciate the thoughts. Any other feedback on this? Committee Member Ayala.
Thank you, Chair. Not on this, but there's one other item that I just wanted to surface.
Okay.
I did want to bring just a little bit of caution to our COVID response item. There is a section in there around how well the county put the funds to best use, and just ensuring that we remain objective in our report. That was just something that, as I read the description of all the other items, that felt a little subjective. And so the way we interpret, not the way we interpret the results, but if we can gain clarity around what it is that we want from that ahead of time, that would be great for when the time comes for that report.
Thank you for that. The language can be important when we figure out the scope of work on that one. Committee Member DeMuth.
Thank you. I would just add to that as well. The U.S. Treasury issued a communication yesterday around their intent to closely look at compliance and legal use of these funds across the U.S., looking at all of the ARPA funds specifically, all of the funding through the SLFRF program. So we will have that added element of the federal government kind of diving into this as well. So we may consider, I don't know if it's the best use of performance audit time to have this on our work plan currently.
Okay, thank you. So is the thought to take it off and see what happens at the federal level and then come back to it? Because I think originally the intent, and I'm thinking back to last year and our former chair, was really around programs that we invested in that helped lift people up or solved problems, kept people housed, sheltered, fed, out of trouble, that actually, like, looking at the small business incubators, like, we came out ahead for these investments. So we stood up X number of actual beds that will now permanently be in our community, things like that. But it is, best use is definitely subjective. So Would you recommend, because of the microscope, that we might be under to pause on this one?
That would be my recommendation. See what happens with the federal government.
Okay. Are there any objections to delaying this one a year? We'll kind of put it in the 2026 work plan, maybe? Okay. Mr. Vetter, is that?
Yep.
Okay. So things I've heard, add behavioral health or therapeutic courts as a standalone item. And Ms. DeMuth, maybe we can have you email Mr. Vetter like a description of what you've already done, and then we can see if that matches. And then remove the COVID one, and in addition, and then add the RCC one. Did I capture everything? Anyone else have other feedback? Okay. This is a work plan. Plan meaning this is what we hope to accomplish. So it is amendable or changeable or something we can do, but it gives our staff the ability to start working on the scopes of work and looking for who would, if we have to outside contract, do that work. So do you need a motion to approve the amended work plan?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the amended work plan, and I'm just going to make sure that we've got them, that we've added a standalone a therapeutic court. We have added the RCC franchise overview that's listed here and removed the COVID response to look at that in the future. Any other feedback? Okay, all those in favor of approving the amended work plan, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everybody, for your thoughts on this. That brings us to number 6, the proposed scope of work for the Parks funding study. Mr. Eisman.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just for some quick background, in February of 2024, the committee approved the work plan that we were just looking at, which includes the project titled Parks Funding Transparency, which was described in there as identifying funding streams and allocations for operations and maintenance versus capital expenditures. We've had an initial review of documentation and what data is available from finance and from the department, and have consulted both with council staff, Parks and Recreation staff, and finance staff, and prepared a scope of work for review and discussion of the committee. So the scope of work includes 3 main sections, one on the funding streams, allocations, and expenditures, one on the capital facilities plans, and then one on project delivery. So for funding streams, allocations, and expenditures, we're looking at in the transparency and understanding of what the funding streams are. So an overview of budgeted and actual revenue and expenditures, including all of the funds that are in use and their legal requirements and fiscal policy that Parks uses to assign money from those funds to operations, maintenance, programming, and capital projects. A review of past biennial budgets and the transfer of funds budgeted for those projects and operations. The actual transfers that match up to those budgets in comparison to their original budgets, and then a look at the emergency projects that arise during any budget cycle that impact available funding over the biennium. For capital facilities plans, we're reviewing several years of the Parks and Recreation facilities plans, reporting on how the same project has evolved over years, where it may have been planned and then bumped and changing timelines and budgets. Any procedural issues that can result in inconsistencies in these plans, so it can making it difficult to identify which are the same projects, as well as calculation of prior funding across multiple years, and then the inclusion of unfunded projects in the capital facilities plan, and a discussion of whether including those projects improves or hinders the budget process, the inclusion of things that will not be in the budget but are just there to give a sense of how much they would cost if we decided to do them. Finally, on project delivery, we'll be looking at delivery timelines of both completed and uncompleted projects, including a review of prior completed projects and what typical timelines are for those projects, including time and budget spent in each phase in order to improve our expectations of current and future projects. An overview of what projects are currently open and where they stand in timeline and budget as compared to their original project charters, which would have defined an initial timeline. Summaries of the most common issues that can lead to changing timelines and budgets, and a look at the alignment of project progress with council policy and budget priorities, and then potentially a more detailed look if there are any specific projects the committee would like to look at. Just a few examples, whether there are projects of concern to committee members, to see where they stand in their process. We're currently scheduled for a final project delivery in August of 2025, but as we've discussed, we will want to help facilitate the development of the next biennial budget, and so we'll be updating on any preliminary recommendations no later than June that may impact both finance and Parks and Recreation's ability to complete their initial budget work.
Okay. Are there questions on this scope of work or additions or changes? I'm especially interested in, Ms. DeMuth, if there's something that would be additionally supportive of the work of the finance team developing the 26-27 biennial budget that you see.
I think it's pretty comprehensive. I don't have anything specific to add. I assume that within this, one item Parks has proposed is merging their two capital funds into one. I believe the scope of work would encompass looking at that as well. Is that accurate?
I would say it certainly could. I don't think that that's come up in any of our discussions yet, but.
So perhaps we should add that to the scope of work then.
Any other questions or feedback on this? Committee Member Newth.
Sorry, one of the items to also add is looking at how we handle unfunded projects as well, or portions of projects that are anticipating grant funds. I know we've had a growth in the number of projects that are technically unfunded but are included in our capital facilities plan.
Yes, thank you, committee member. I think that's covered in the last bullet point under capital facilities plans, is to look at unfunded projects and their inclusion in the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. I think the only thing I would, and it's maybe not an ad because it's probably captured in here, but we have parks facilities that are in other jurisdictions. And so just, I think, making sure that we capture those, that all of them, whether they're in a city or in another parks district, or if we have parks facilities, flipping that around where we have shared parks facilities. I think we have some with Tacoma. Maybe we don't anymore, but or trails that transverse multiple jurisdictions, and how those are funded if there's projects that are passing boundaries, just kind of the geography of our complex parks district. So I know my council district has a couple of parks facilities that are in other people's jurisdictions. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Okay, so this is a draft, or are we approving this today? We're approving this today. Okay, so is there a motion to approve the scope of work for the parks funding study?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the parks funding study, the work that is before us. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Eisman. We look forward to hearing about that. Next up, item number 7 is the 2024 annual report. Let's go back to Mr. Vetter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The committee is required by charter to report annually to the public on the highlights of performance audits conducted that year. I've included the annual report in the packet. Thank you to the communications team for putting that together. It goes through the interlocal agreement study, traffic fatalities study, and the follow-up of boards and commissions, in addition to giving some quick notes about what we'll be working on what the committee will be working on this year. Committee member Kruver has pointed out that some of the links aren't active, so we will fix that before publishing or before, and in addition to any other edits the committee might want to suggest. Given that we are just presenting this now, the committee may want to review it before the next meeting and suggest any changes. But otherwise, at some point, the committee will have to approve it before we publish it on the website.
Okay. Since we're voting on possibly changing our time, the very last page that says the time, we would need to change that. That's a simple one. Other feedback or questions or things that people would like to see in this report? Committee member Ayala.
Thank you, Chair. I'm curious around some of the graphical data that is there. Do we have a dashboard available, or is this a stagnant data set?
Good question. So thank you, Committee Member Ayala. This is a clip from the report itself. There has been ample conversation about how to report demographics on boards and commissions. I believe there is a page up on the county's, is it still open, Pierce County, on some of that. I know that they were continuing to work on that. I'm not sure what the current executive's plans for that are. But I would, yes, take a look and see if it answers some of your questions there. If not, I'm happy to try to help guide you to the right place.
My only suggestion is that if we do have a live dashboard, that we embed some clickable something where folks can do a deeper dive if they so choose to.
Thank you. Good suggestion.
Thank you. Other feedback? I think a question for me is where it says like the 2022 projects, do we have links to those reports that we could embed in this document as well?
We can.
Okay. And then wondering if it's 2022 and then maybe the 2024, like is 2023 in here anywhere?
I think we'll go through and scrub the dates there.
Okay. But so like anything that's a project where we know we actually had a report, having a link to the actual like report that I know is somewhere on our website, I think would be good because it's all in one place, and that way if somebody's like, oh, I want to read about this, it makes it more user friendly. So okay. Questions or comments? If you read it later and on your free time have feedback, please reach out to Mr. Vetter or Mr. Eisman. Sure, they would accept any feedback. We don't need to approve this. We'll take a look at it next week or next month. Okay. Thank you. Okay, item 8 is establishing our regular meeting time. So today we met at 10:30 and wanted to see if people were amenable to permanently moving to 10:30 on the fourth Wednesday. Which Wednesday are we? Fourth Wednesday of the month. But is that a special meeting? Like what is our normal?
Well, the committee will set the normal meeting.
Okay.
At this time. The last time it was set, it was at the fourth Wednesday.
Okay.
At 10 a.m.
Okay. And it seemed like last time Wednesdays were still good. And the fourth Wednesday was still good because people already had it blocked out. But starting a half an hour later is the question, unless there's other feedback. Is there any objection from committee members to moving to 10:30 start time? We're usually done before noon, so people can hopefully eat a meal. Okay. I'm not seeing any objections, so I would like to call the question. I believe we need to actually vote on this. So do I have to have a motion? I have to have a motion. Robert's rules.
I move that we make a permanent change to the Performance Audit Committee meeting to the fourth Wednesday starting at 10:30 a.m.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjust our regular meeting time to 10:30 a.m., but it's on, continues on the fourth Wednesday of the month. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Then I can try and be in two places at once. Is there any other business before the Performance Audit Committee this morning?
There is no other business.
Okay. Seeing no other business, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.